And what is happening in the investigation? You heard in that press conference they're still looking for this babysitter that they can't find. Are investigators then tossing Casey Anthony aside? Let's go to Rosie Franco, reporter for WFLA Radio and the Florida News Network. And Rosie, they have said at time and again, including today, that Casey is not cooperating. So they are spending more time with the family. What else are investigators up to? You're on the inside.
Right, that's interesting. Casey is not cooperating. So Deputy Carlos Padilla from the Orange County Sheriff's Office says they're going to go around her. They're going into this investigation full throttle, and that means they're taking the stains from the trunk of the car, they're taking the shovel from the DNA evidence from the shovel, and they mention that there might be other evidence that will be surfacing. We will not learn that until next week. Now, what's interesting about the soil samples is that will tell a lot, because the cadaver dogs, actually, Padilla stated that the cadaver dogs sensed that there might have been a decomposing body that might have been moved from the backyard.
Yeah, the soil samples from the house, the soil samples from the car, potentially hook up. They don't say what kind of soil it is. But what I wanted to ask you is, Cindy and George Anthony were pretty adamant that they didn't feel investigators were taking their daughter seriously or looking for Caylee enough. Today they had a little bit of a different attitude. What was their mood today when you saw them?
Well, Cindy's been very supportive of Casey. I can't say the same about George. Now, he's kind of been distant. Now, George is also an ex-police officer, so it raises a lot of questions in this situation. You know, could there have been a body buried in the backyard, and could there have been some calculating situation that transpired between the pair? We don't know that. Okay, I'm not speculating. I'm just simply posing the question. But he was an ex-police officer, and he's been cooperative, but he hasn't been that forthcoming to the media.
Yeah, today they really didn't have a lot to say. One of the few days they haven't come out and talk. I know they were at an event today for missing children, and they're trying to raise awareness and money for missing children, including Caylee. They hope the search continues. Rosie, thanks so much. Coming up, what were police searching for then at Caylee's grandparents' house today? Could an important clue have been left behind? Will what's in those evidence bags that we have seen them carry out of the house crack the case? Police are really busy in Florida. Earlier today, they took 2 bags of evidence that we know of from the home of missing Caylee Anthony's grandparents. What were they looking for? Joining us by phone is former LAPD homicide detective Mark Furhman. Mark, good to have you with us. They only spent about 6 minutes in the house, so obviously a targeted search. They knew what they were looking for. Do you think it's something we left behind last time, or is it something completely new?
Well, it certainly can be something left behind. You take a lot of photos when you're inside a residence and you're doing a search. So if you see something that possibly caught your interest in the photos and you didn't take it the first time you go back, or, Jamie, you made an interesting comment. 6 minutes inside, they knew specifically what they wanted, and perhaps that's because something that they tested, something that they looked at, actually led them to another area or a specific place or a section of a carpet or a drawer or a closet or anything like that, and they specifically went to that location and took it.
What do you think about the grandparents' participation, the fact that it's at their house, the fact that they have said local authorities are not getting the search underway for Caylee, and this press conference where we hear today the search continues, they're still looking for the babysitter, and Casey is still not a bit of help?
Well, you know, it seems that the grandparents, from what I've seen, are not really dealing with the reality of the situation. The only thing that I've heard that has turned out to be truth in this entire thing is that Casey Anthony borrowed a shovel. That's a disturbing fact, since she hasn't seen her child since June 9th. And I think that reality check should start setting in with the grandparents, unless there's some reason it shouldn't. And I'm a little disturbed by all the parties involved in this.
Well, what about Caylee? I mean, can you remember another case, Mark, where a mother's child is missing, a mother who says, I desperately searched for my daughter, and then we see pictures of her out partying during that period of time, that is so uncooperative with authorities?
Well, let me put it this way, Jamie. When a small child is missing for just several hours, up to that first 12 hours, I'm going to use two words to describe what you can't even hardly hear their words, but it is hysterical. It is distraught. It is that kind of feeling that their stomach has dropped out the bottom of their body, that they're almost unable to even stand. That's what I've always seen. This young lady acts like somebody that lost maybe a piece of clothing. She doesn't act like anybody that's concerned with this child whatsoever.
Well, we'll remind our viewers that at the beginning, one of those jailhouse calls was like, hey, how you doing? Why is everyone so focused on Caylee, her daughter, and not more on her? Meanwhile, you mentioned the shovel, Mark, and we hadn't talked about that in a while, but what about the soil samples that they have, the car? We haven't gotten any of these DNA results. They've been pretty forthcoming otherwise, the authorities. Why aren't we hearing about that? Do they know already, or does it take more time?
Well, you know, there's several prongs to this shovel. Shovel is something that, you know, you don't ask if or when she borrowed this shovel. How many times did she borrow a shovel in the past? I'll probably take a guess, 0. So what is the shovel going to tell you? The shovel has dirt on it. Is that dirt consistent with the neighborhood in these manicured lawns, or is it consistent with some vegetation that doesn't grow there? So they're looking at specific types of vegetation and any kind of evidence of that so they can focus their search. And the other thing is if there was a body moved and that shovel was used to actually dig up and move a body, then a decomposing body will secrete fluids into the soil, and those will remain there, and they can test that. So there's several things that they can do with this shovel.
All right, Mark, I'm out of time. I really don't even like to discuss decomposing bodies, but I'll never forget the grandmother's first call to 911 when she says the car, Casey's car, smelled like there was a decomposing body. Mark, thanks so much.
Thanks,
Coming
Jamie.
up, the clock is definitely ticking.